I don't see Theron in the chat, but we'll go and get started. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. This is Brother. They make printers, and we use their products quite a bit in the field. Industrial label makers are super important for, when you're doing patch panels, keystones. It's very important to keep things documented, your cables, and that's just part of our meeting that gold standard that we like to adhere to. And Theron Forker from Cable and Connections, he's not on the call right now. Hopefully he can join us, but he's been with Low Voltage Nation, a big supporter, and we all love Theron and Cable and Connections. So he introduced me to Rob and Brother, and several of us directors, ambassadors, and just people in the community use their printers in the field quite a bit. So with that being said, thank you, Rob, for taking some time out of your day and getting on this hot seat. I hope you're ready to present. So without further ado, Rob, thank you, and take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Blake. You can see the website that we have for Brother Mobile Solutions for these printers. And if you don't remember that, just remember Brother Mobile Solutions, and you can Google it and it'll take you right to the site. I'm now going to bring up what we use as an engineering firmware tool. This is a tool that I actually use for selling and for training at this point, now that COVID is among us. And you can see as I touch the keypad, wherever the arrow is, and I make a keystroke, it's going to show up in the display. This is exactly what the unit looks like when you turn it on. This is not some facsimile of the screen. This is literally what the screen looks like. For those of you who are not familiar with it, I've already turned the unit on. And just to give you an overview of what we're looking at here, this is always going to be the width of the tape. And when you put the tape in, the machine knows what size tape you put in. This is always going to be the length, and that's going to be determinant regarding what information you put in. Now I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to start off by doing a patch panel, cable wrap, and faceplate. More or less in that order. It doesn't matter what order I choose to do them in. And I'm not going to say much about what I'm doing. I just want you to take note of the speed at which I can do this. I'm going to go back and then walk through the patch panel, the wire wrap, and then the faceplate. But just to give you some idea for those of you who are using it and those of you who are not using it, here's how quickly you can actually run through, say, a 36-port patch panel, which I'm then going to convert into 36 wire wraps and then convert into 36 face plates. So without any further ado, I'm going to hit A1-101. Not necessarily exactly Bixby standards, however, it'll serve the purpose for what I want to do. You'll notice that I'm in general mode here. It doesn't really matter what I start off with, but I'm going to go ahead and put the machine into patch panel. And for those of you who are familiar with the Rhino tool, you'll see a lot of the same questions. It just looks like they come up maybe in a different format. We try to put everything in one screen instead of a couple of screens. So the block length is literally the center on center distance or left-hand edge to the other left-hand edge to the port beside it. What you'll find is that 0.60 to 0.62 is pretty much the sweet spot. So I'm just going to say 0.60. And I can scroll down and say, okay, number of blocks. This is the grouping. 4 is not uncommon, but 6 is more common. So I'm going to just use my east-west buttons to toggle the number and get it up to 6. For separator, I'm just going to leave the 2 little tick marks in there. I can use east-west buttons and put solid lines, broken lines, no lines. It doesn't matter. And then in the orientation, this is going to read just like you're reading it right now. However, if I had vertical ports that I needed to address, I could literally lay these on their side for vertical applications. All right, now that I've done that, I've told the machine what the spacing needs to be, and I've told it what the grouping is. So without further ado, I'm going to hit OK. Once I do that, it tells me that I'm going to have a 3.7-inch grouping of 6 ports label when it's all said and done. And I've got a 9mm or a 0.35 inch in here to tell me that that's the width of the tape. Once I go to a wire wrap or something like that, I would put in a wider tape, a 3/4 inch or a 1 inch, but I'm not going to do that for this exercise. Just know that that's what you would do. Now you'll see I've got the remaining 5 ports here. Okay, well, I could jump in here with the east-west key and type in A1-102 and so forth, but I'm trying to get to 36. So I'm going to now go down here and find the serialization button, and I'm going to serialize the 0 and the 1. It doesn't matter what order I do this in. So I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to hit the east button and highlight the second one because I need to get to A1-136. I hit OK. It's going to ask me for a count. I want it to be 1, 2, 3, so I'm going to leave it at 1. And I actually want it to get up to 36. So what I want to do here is hold the button down, and I can hold it down and it'll jump 5 at a time. So that's my total count. If it were 48, I'd put 48 in here. If I were doing this up to 96, I could do that as well. Now I'm going to address the increments. Since I want 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to leave it at 1. Some customers like to have, say, odd on the top and even on the bottom. In that case, if I put a 2 in here and I lead off with A1-101 and I have 2 as the increment, I'm going to get 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 across the top. And then I can go back and restart it at A1-102 and do the exact same thing and have 2, 4, 6, 8 and so forth on up to 36 along the bottom. Hit OK. All right, my patch panel's done. I can start hitting print and they're going to come out in groups of 6. And that's phenomenal as it is. It's a great party trick and it'll amaze your friends. However, that's just part of it. The beauty of this is now I would change the cartridge to put a 3/4 inch or a 1 inch tape in, and I'm going to go to cable wrap. And when I go to cable wrap, I can just simply say, okay, I want a unit of measure of Cat 5, Cat 6. You'll notice below it, you'll see a value. It blanks it out because it already knows how much tape to bring out for Cat 5, Cat 6. But anywhere I have a length or a diameter, then I have the opportunity to scroll down and actually tell it what that is. But for the sake of argument here, we're just going to leave it at Cat 5, Cat 6. It defaults to repeat because I'm going to want A1-101 to repeat itself all the way through. I hit OK. All my cable wraps are done. It tells me what the width of the tape is, and it tells me how long that tape's going to be. I go into faceplate. I choose, say the faceplate's got a window on it. A lot of times that's a 1.5 inch window. So I'm going to come down here to maybe 1.4. Number of blocks, I'm just going to leave it at 1. Orientation, I have the same opportunity to lay that information on its side if I wanted to, depending on how you might need to label the block. I hit OK. It tells me I'm in faceplate. My faceplates are done, and it tells me how long they're going to be. So if you did this on a non-industrial printer, you'd basically be taking 6 times 36. Oh, and for the patch panel, don't forget the spaces in between, and start doing the math. It's going to add up. Then your reward for that is you get to start all over with the cable wraps and do the exact same thing all over again. And then if that wasn't bad enough, you'd have to go to your faceplates and start sitting there banging out each individual keystroke. So with what I've done here, you see everything in the same grouping of information, and you can put it in whatever format you want to put it in. And if for some reason I go back to patch panel and I say, oh, you know what? That really wasn't 0.60, it really was 0.62. Okay, fair enough. It changed it from 3.7 to 3.8. So here's what I'm going to do now. I've shown you what the individual processes are. So if I go in here and I say clear, and I'm just going to clear it all. All right, I'm in patch panel. If I were on the job, this is basically what I'd be doing. If you'll just follow the cursor, A1-101, and I'm going to say patch panel. It remembers some of the last information I put in there, so here it goes. serialize, east-west button, .36, patch panels are done. Cable wraps, cable wraps are done. Base plates, base plates are done. If you can do that by typing individual keystrokes in faster than I can do that, I'll buy you a steak dinner. That's good for anybody on the call. So that's what I wanted to let you see just based on what this unit is. Now, for those of you who use the Rhino machine, Rhino's a fine machine, and you can do the same things that I just did here. However, there are some differences in the machines. One of the things you'll see down here at the bottom for this machine is the Wi-Fi button. I can literally hook this Wi-Fi up so that with the software, which you can access for free because it's freeware, you can, on your computer, create your label template format. And you can do a couple of things. You can either use the USB cord that comes with it and drop the database literally into the printer directly, or you can create a file and save that file and be able to transmit it via email to whoever you need to send it to. It can be opened off of your phone, and you can then use your phone to drop the database into the machine. So if you have a screw up right there in town and somebody needs to redo some labels, that's not the end of the world. You lose some time, no doubt. But if you're in another city, another state, and you have this type of problem and you need for somebody to redo the labels, you can redo those labels wherever you are in the world and email those labels, and the tech can pick it up off the phone and drop it into the printer, and you can hit the ground running. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go into the details on that, but just know that that is another functionality of the machine. I can also, you'll see the file button here. I can go in here and say, save, okay, and I want it to be number 1. And now I can call it something, whatever I want to call it, and hit okay. So now I can go back in to, I can hit clear it out, hit file, open, okay, and then my RTYU is sitting right there. Now here's where the benefit comes in for being able to save a file. The most important thing in this, the thing that saves you the most time, is without question the patch panel. As far as a wire wrap goes, a 1-inch or a 3/4 inch wire wrap, it's agnostic. It doesn't matter what you're putting it on. However, with a patch panel, if you're using the same hardware connectivity manufacturer, and even right down to the part number, that 0.62, 0.60, 0.63, whatever it is, you can go in and save that file so that when you bring it back up for, oh, I don't know, maybe B1-101, all of the spacing is still going to be resident on that saved file. All you have to do is go into the file, go to the first label, backspace over the A, make it a B, and then reserialize the run so that the B's show up where the A's are currently showing up. So now, after doing all that work, you're able to still reap the benefits of it by just simply going in and backspacing over a character and then reserializing, and then you can go from patch panel to wire wraps with the B on them to faceplates with the B on them in the first character. So I've really tried to just simplify this just to make it easy to kind of take in. And I know this is being recorded, and I've told Blake and Darren this. I'm available. You can reach out to me. They have my contact information. You can email me if you want to get online into a Zoom meeting or something like that. I will be happy to give you personal attention as far as walking you through the various aspects of the machine if it would help you to be more fluent in them, for lack of a better word. And one of the things you'll see is that Brother has support all over the country. There's 5 other people like me. We have US-based help desk. And if you have a problem, we're going to address it. That cannot be said of all of my competitors. And I'll just leave it at that. But you have the ability to tap into me anytime you want. And if there's any questions, I'll take those now. Blake, if there's something else you need to do with respect to this, let me know.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Rob. There was a remark from Abe, and he mentioned something about the different sizes. Abe, can you chime in and kind of tell us what you meant by that?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of using the Brother 550W here for the last 10 months with Chris and Pierce, and I actually just bought my own because I need it. I love their printer. I love the fact that I can serialize and get a long strand and not waste tape. So we've gone in, we use Leviton patch panels with Pierce. We use vertical cable patch panels with Pierce and Chris. And we have found through trial and error that 0.72 and 0.70, 0.72 is perfect for the vertical patch panels, the blanks, and 0.70, 0.72, one of those two is perfect for the Levitons. But I've never used a brand new Brother printer. Like I've used what Chris had. So I just got mine today or last week and opened it up, and inside your instruction packet is a little slider in there that you can measure your patch panels to get the exact 0.0 whatever 0.7 spacing so that you can set this up. Had we known that, we wouldn't have wasted so much tape through trial and error. And seeing that when I opened up my new one, it was a game changer, because not only does it do patch panels, it also does your faceplates.
That is correct. And I want to show you something else. And I apologize for, and I told this to Blake early on. You can see this is, after about 15 minutes, this thing will lock up. But one of the things I want to, but I can still convey the point with this. Even when you're doing trial and error on the patch, on the patch panel, this dimension right here will give you the length. So you can kind of hone in on it a little bit quicker as well. So there's 2 ways to do it. You can use that little credit card, or you can, even with trial and error, because if this thing comes up 3.9 and you're like, man, it looks like it's closer to a 3.6 or 3.7, you know, you just know it's a little shorter. All you have to do is just hit patch panel again, and the very top line is going to be that spacing. So you can make that, you know, you can reduce it or increase it as you see fit, and see if it moves the needle as far as this dimension right here. I will also tell you this, with respect to that credit card, there can be some tolerance differences within the machines, but they are consistent. So what may work for that Leviton panel at whatever spacing you have, most likely is going to work for all of them, as far as each individual printer, not that the Leviton equipment is coming in and wonky. But just keep that in mind. Now, one other thing with respect to serialization, that when you mentioned that, it reminded me of something else. Let's just say 101 and then A1 102 right beside it, and then 103 right beside that. If for some reason this second port is actually a drop, or it's something that's not being used, but you don't want the serialization thrown off, you still want this label to be 03, you can come in to any of these labels, backspace over them, and type whatever you want in here as long as it fits. And it will not throw off the rest of the serialization. So once it's serialized, it's static. Anything you put in, if I were to put a 5 in here where the 2 is, it won't turn this third one into a 6. It'll just leave it as a 3. So you have some flexibility, because sometimes with voice over internet or whatever, you may use something that you don't want to be a part of the other datacom connections necessarily, and you call it something else, or you're going to put something in at a later time and it's going to be called something else. You'll have that flexibility to go in and manipulate this as you see fit. So I just wanted to share that. Any other questions?
My other question, or one of my concerns with the labels themselves, is you do not make a 3/8 inch flexible cable wrap unless it's in a permanent foundation or a permanent sticky. We use a lot of flexible cable wraps, and we have found that 3/8 inch is perfect for relabeling a patch panel. So normally when we're installing, we have 24, 48, 72, and 96. We have a lot of drops that we do, and covering up that patch panel number on the patch panels. The 1/2 inch we have to roll underneath, but the 3/8 is just perfect. Now I have found them from a third-party manufacturer, but my main concern is on the flexible cable wraps, especially in black print on yellow label. You don't make them.
Correct. We don't, and the reason being is, and I disagree with it. It's just one man's opinion. Typically, something that narrow is not thought of as your typical wire wrap. However, for what you're using it for, if it's just, sometimes people just want to put, 2 digits on there.
Right.
And plenty. So yeah, on any flat surface, you don't want to use the FX tapes. Only on a rounded surface do you want to use an FX tape. And that would include anything, cameras, smoke detectors, or whatever, anything that's got a round base on it. Even though that's a smooth base, if it's rounded, you're still better off using the FX tape as long as you're using it on the curved part of the base. If you're putting it on a flat surface, you should never use FX tape because it wants to bend. And again, that's a good point that's brought out there with respect to the 9mm. That's available only on black on white for FX.
Right. We use it day in and day out. This is a beautiful printer. It beats the Brady. It beats the Dymo that I've used in the past, and I recommend it to everybody that is looking to buy a high-end industrial type printer. You can't go wrong, and the price point is perfect. So, Rob, I appreciate you. Appreciate you going over the features. Having used it over 10 months, I'll never go to another one unless you guys have a better one out there.
Well, and I appreciate that. And we also just keep in mind with respect to the tapes, if you're having the label on a textured surface, which is gaining a little bit more popularity than it did maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the tapes that are designated as extra strength, they have an S in the middle of the part number, just like FX appears in the middle of the part number. The letter S is in strength appears in the part number. That has a thicker adhesive backing on it. Not that you could look at it and notice it, but it's just a little bit thicker. And it allows the adhesive to get onto the sides of the, kind of think of the mountaintop, and you lay a flat surface across something that has peaks on it. You'll be able to see little gaps in there. And the extra adhesive on the back allows it to kind of get down on the side of the slopes of that textured pebbled finish. If you use just the regular strength, for lack of a better word, you just have less surface area that you're actually connecting to. So I would say, unless if you're on a smooth surface, the non-S, non-FX is fine. If you're on a pebble grain or textured surface, as long as it's flat, you still want to use the S. And if it's curved, like wrapping around, then you're going to use the FX. Any other questions? One thing that some people may not know about this machine is What's unique to the 550 is the fact that it has Wi-Fi, but it also has one other feature called a half cut. And somebody made reference to being able to bring out a string of labels at one time. And with respect to patch panels, this may or may not be that big of a deal, but you can literally have the machine come out and score the label, but not the backing. So where that's going to be probably most helpful is going to be on things like faceplates. Because typically, if you're labeling a rack or you're labeling the patch panels coming, the patch cords coming into and out of the panel, they're more or less a numerical sequence. However, once you get outside of that room and you're now going to the various workstations, it's not always going to be such that everything's in some type of chronological order. So you end up having to cut tape with other manufacturers. And so once you cut a 36 run tape, now you've got 2 pieces of tape. You cut one of those, now you've got 3, and you see how the math goes. The next thing you know, you've got a bunch of little pieces of adhesive stickers you're trying to keep up with. With the half cut feature, it allows you to go to the 20th one first, if you want to, peel it off, and you still have the run of tapes still held together because of the backing. The other thing is, outside of the heat shrink, our tapes have 26.2 feet of tape on them. That is better than virtually everybody in the industry, and the price point is the same as any number of people who are charging for 18 and 11 feet of tape. And some other manufacturers were literally half their price. So that's just something to keep in mind as far as cost savings. And when you think about using this machine, for those of you who are not using a machine like this, labeling is about the last thing you do. Then it's got to be inspected. Well, you probably don't need the full crew to stay on hand if labeling needs to be redone. So if it takes 3 days to do labeling and using this machine gets you off in a half a day or a day, you can redeploy your assets, these resources, to the next job. And if somebody needs to come back and take care of some Mac work or something, then so be it. But you don't have to keep the whole staff there held hostage. And if you can get off the job 2 days sooner, you can invoice your customer 2 days sooner, and you can get paid hopefully 2 days sooner. So hopefully all of this rolls into a bigger value add package for you. And again, Blake and Darren have my contact information, and I am more than happy to get on a call with you and talk through anything that you're with. And if there's something you think I can help you with, I'll be more than happy to do it.
Sorry, Rob, I'm commandeering this entire chat. I use it every day. So when I hook it up to my laptop through the USB to use the application, do you guys release regular firmware updates or software updates for these at any point? The reason I ask is one of my main concerns is when I do serialization, I have to use the east-west arrows to go up in number instead of typing in how many ports that I want to use.
Understood. So, that is,
it's a minor inconvenience that we've gotten around, but like I said, I love the damn thing.
Well, and point well taken. And something that I'll now share with the group is back from 2003 to 2008, I actually worked for Rhino Dymo Labeling. So I'm intimately familiar with both units. I can still pick up a Rhino unit and pretty much close my eyes and go right through it. And just for some transparency here, my boss used to work with me at Rhino. And when he left to go to Brother. And when he went to Brother, he basically had one of the Rhino printers in hand. And he said, hey, if you guys want to get into this market and be successful, you need to do what Rhino's doing, but you need to do it better. And so that's why for those of you who are familiar with the Rhino machine, you see that it'll ask you, the Brother machine asks you the same questions. It actually gives you the option for a few other things that the Dymo machine doesn't. But for the most part, they're very similar. So if I handed you a 550 or a 500 and, threatened to push you off a cliff if you couldn't use it, you'd be able to figure it out. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. So for those of you who would be looking to transition, it's an easy transition. And I'm here to help with that should you need me. Anything else from anybody else? And Blake, please don't let me dominate this thing. I mean,
No, you're good. There was a question from Mike. Where's the best place to purchase one? Abe, where are you buying them? Are you buying them from Certified or Cable and Connections, or where do you get your stuff from?
I got mine from Tom at Cable and Connections out of New Jersey. My understanding is Theron's more on the western part of the U.S.
Okay.
But Cable and Connections, I got it within a week when I ordered it. I have no qualms with them. I understand that Certified Connections also has the same deal that's going on with buying these.
Mm-hmm.
I highly recommend it. It's hands down better than the Dymo 300 XTL that I've used in the past, and it's hands down better than the Brady.
And then what about
and the fact that
cost of labels
is perfect. I'm sorry.
What about the cost for the labels as it compares to Dymo and Brady? Is it cheaper?
Dymo XTL for the Dymo 300 that I have, the cost are $23 for a label. They only do black print on white. And I think the footage is 15 or 20 feet. With the Brady labels, the biggest thing with the Brady labels, I think, are $17 to $20 themselves as well. I think if you give me a second, where'd Theron go, Tom? Cable and Connections, invoice. I bought 15 labels and they were maybe $15 a pop. So already I'm saving $7 over the Dymo.
There you go.
And the fact that the brother does the half cut, especially on serialization, my helper here, Tim and I, what we did is I printed out 1 to 48, 2 sets of them, so that I can label my cable as I'm pulling it, so that when I go to do the rack, I already know what that cable is. I'm not searching for a Sharpie. And then on the other end, when we cut it, we also label it at that point.
Nice.
So, I'm using 4 feet of cable or less times 2, so maybe 10 feet total of cable to label my cables on both sides. I'm not trying to figure out by using electricians cable wraps. I'm not trying to find a Sharpie mark. Basically, I print this out. I know exactly what cable I'm yanking. So it's a time saver. And $50 a cartridge, I'll buy them all day long.
Well, and here's something else, and this is just 2 things, and it's tape related. One of the things about our tapes, even the ones that are not used specifically for label wraps, when you look at our cartridges, there's actually 3 spools on there. One's the ribbon, one's the actual substrate tape, but there's a third one on there that's actually clear laminate. So you'll see, and Dymo does this and Brady does this as well, they'll make a tape that has kind of a tail on it, and you use that clear tail to wrap over to protect the actual text. With ours, we're printing on the underside of the clear laminate. So we're kind of printing it in reverse in a way of thinking. And then that laminate is heated and fused to the substrate after it is run through the ribbon. So once you make our label and you take a key or something and start rubbing back and forth on it, you're not rubbing on the toner. You're not rubbing on the ribbon that's been heated up and transferred. You're just rubbing on a plain clear piece of laminate. So when you see a spec that calls for laminated tape, you're already getting that lamination by virtue of using our tape, as opposed to using a more expensive, non-standard laminated tape from my competitors. So that's just something to keep in mind. And also, one of the things with respect to, and this is just how the machines are set up. The 5200 and the 6000 from Dymo, and I'm not speaking out of school here, and I'm sure there's people on here who have done this. For those of you who are in the South or in any area where it gets hot, and it gets hot all over the country at some point in time, if you leave tape cartridges in a 6000 or a 5200, they're heat transfer. All these printers are. Well, that heat doesn't have to come from the printer. It can come from the environment. So what I always told people was take the cartridges out of the machine. Otherwise, you run the risk of the tape being pressed up against the ribbon, and it will stick. And once it sticks, if you don't think to make sure that that's separated before you start printing, you're going to print it out. It's going to work fine. When you hit the cut button, you're going to cut the label and you're going to cut the ribbon. Now, you can still use the cartridge. I'm not telling you to throw it away. What I am telling you, though, is every time you cut the ribbon, another piece of ribbon is going to fall out as well. And next thing you know, you're going to have this stuff, static cling, sticking to you, sticking to your fingers, your clothes, wherever you go. That's something to keep in mind. The other thing is, somebody made reference to it on the half cut. I had a conversation with a contractor, and we were talking about the machine, and I got to the half cut feature, and I said, this way, when you're going from faceplate to faceplate, you're not going to end up with two little pieces of backing that are sitting there. And he said, man, he said, let me stop you right there. He said, I got a phone call yesterday, and it was the end user, the customer, called and said, you need to send somebody out here and pick up the 2 pieces or 4 pieces of backing that are sitting in front on the floor of every one of my faceplates. And he's like, I had to get in a car and drive over there and go pick that up for about 110 faceplates. He said, if I'd have had this, we could strip them off and then put the wadding in our, wad it up and put it in our pocket until we got to a trash can. So even little things like that start to add up to the overall efficiency of using the machine. The cost, the cleanup, getting your crew off of the job faster to redeploy them at another location, that's money. And I can't stress it enough. So that's why I'm really passionate about this machine, because it seems like nothing in the middle of a sea of very expensive other pieces of tooling and equipment and splicers and connectivity. But this is one of the most critical machines that you can use to help save time and money. And I'll leave it at that unless there's any other questions.
I haven't experienced this with the brother yet, because normally once we fly in, we move all of our equipment into the workspace and it gets time to acclimate to the environment. But with flying, or even in the Northeast where it gets brutally cold in the winter, with my Dymo printer and my Brady, it seemed that the labels would bleed. Mm-hmm. Especially on that first print. We'd have to print 5 or 6 before the bleed would go away. Does this have any, like I said, I haven't experienced it yet with your printer. Does it have any problems with extreme cold temperatures?
Extreme cold temperatures are going to be the enemy of any heat transfer, any thermal transfer ribbon. So will it be better or worse? I wish I could say. I do think it's smart to acclimate the printer as much as possible, because just as I mentioned with the Rhino, in the heat, in a hot environment, you have the opposite effect, because I experienced it with Rhino as well in cold environments. And I mean, even in cold in North Carolina, it's not cold in Maine. So 2 different levels of cold, and I get it. So I would tell you that in my travels so far, I have not had people call it out specifically to me, but that's not to say that you may see something similar. And honestly, if you could give me some feedback as that time rolls through, I would be very appreciative of that, because that's one thing I can't get in an environment that's as cold as the environment that you're going to be in. But do understand that heat transfer and thermal transfer, it's the same technology used in all of these printers. So they are going to be subject to cold weather and having to get warmed up to a degree before you start seeing the performance that you really want. I wish there was a better way to tell you that, hey, no, you're not going to have that problem, but I do not want to say that and not be able to know that it's true.
Appreciate that. I just wanted to bring that up because we've experienced it on other printers, but not yet on yours, but it's just beginning to become fall here.
Right.
We'll find out in about 2 months.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know if you mentioned this, Rob, but it has a proprietary rechargeable battery and it accepts AA batteries, which makes me really excited for some reason. I don't know why, but I love having the options of being able to plug it in and then using just regular batteries and having the rechargeable proprietary battery. So kudos on that.
And I believe you can actually charge it and still use it. It's not like you like get into an AC adapter to charge, but while it's charging, you can still make labels with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm excited to check out some of the I guess the mobile application functionality, and then there's there's a USB, just a micro or a mini USB port as well.
That's
so
right.
I've seen a lot of cool things on that area. So that's pretty cool.
It's slick stuff, and the software is usable on the 500 and the 550. The difference in price is not significant between the two. I recommend the 550 because even for people who say, well, I'm not going to use the app and the half cut function is not that important to me. I tell you, once you use the half cut function, it's hard to just kind of disregard it and say, I don't know if it's really worth it. To me, the half cut function is probably used by more contractors and techs than the actual app is used. The app is really not heavily used because a lot of people do the printing right there on the spot. And I get it. But if you want to, you can do it that way. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see at the bottom of the page, you see the file and the database. When the database comes in through the app, that's where you're going to go find it. It will not show up over here under file. So just know that when you come in, that's where you're going to find the database once you send it in. Now, you can then, because the database is only coming in as just basically a CSV file. It's just going to have cells with information in it. The file is actually saving not only that information, but it's saving it in a format. That's the difference between the file and the database button. The file has a format associated with it. It's not just saving what you see in that display right now, one cell after the other. It's saving it as a faceplate in this particular situation. So I just share that with you as well.
Cool.
Anything else, Blake? Anything you need from me?
No, Rob, I appreciate your passion. I love when somebody's enthusiastic about the products that they support and they sell. And I really appreciate you hopping on. Did anybody else have any questions or anything? Abe, any more questions? Yeah, thank you, Abe, for hopping on. You've been awesome.
Great. I love you, man. Where's your hat, brother? Where's your hat?
Yeah, I got it. I had to wear the cable and connections one today, but I got it. There's content coming. Don't worry about it.
Now, the saving feature on this thing, and same with the Dymo that I used previously, the fact that once you dial in your faceplates and what you're standardized on, and you can save it and name it exactly what you want and pull it up, what a time saver. You don't have to sit there and go down through the menus. So, I mean, I just like your printer, Rob. I really do.
Thanks. That's good to hear.
Thanks to Chris Diffie for introducing it to me. But I just absolutely love it. The features are great. And I mean, that little credit card that you put in the manual bag is phenomenal.
Thank you. And like I said, I'm available. Blake and Theron have my contact information. If there's anything you want to do with me, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to take you through it and answer any questions I can for you.
Cool. Oh, Chris Tiffany, you have a question? He's kind of breaking up a little bit. All right. Well, yeah, we'll stop at that. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending, and we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake.